There is a particular kind of pain that no longer makes a sound. It does not scream. It does not wake you in the middle of the night anymore. You have stopped expecting it to. And that, strangely, is the most dangerous moment of all, because somewhere along the way, you stopped calling it pain and started calling it normal. You learned to step around it the way a person learns to step around a piece of broken glass left on the floor of a familiar room. You never bend down to pick it up. You simply adjust your walk, day after day, year after year, until you forget the glass is even there. Until the limp becomes who you are. I want to talk to the part of you that has been quiet for a very long time. Not the part that answers the messages, finishes the work, and tells everyone you are fine. The deeper part, the one that learned to hold its breath. Because if you are still here, still listening, still awake when you could have turned away, then somewhere inside you there is a soul that has been trying to tell you something for years, and it is finally ready to be heard. So before you carry the same old weariness into another ordinary day, be still for a moment. Give that quiet part of you a place deep enough to speak. Here is the first thing it has been waiting to say. You have wounds that no longer startle you, not because they have healed, but because you have grown used to living beside them. You have grown so accustomed to the ache that you mistook the silence for peace. But numbness is not peace. Endurance is not the same thing as healing, and a heart that has simply learned to survive is not the same as a heart that has been made whole. There were days when you smiled while you were bleeding on the inside. Days when you said you were fine because you could not bear for anyone to ask the second question. You told yourself that everyone carries wounds, so you had no right to be weak, no right to ask for more. But listen to me carefully, because this is important. The fact that the whole world is hurting does not make your pain something you were meant to keep. A field can be called barren, even though flowers once grew there. A neglected garden does not bloom again, simply because the years keep passing over it. Time can cover a wound with dust. Only grace can heal it at the root. This brings me to a man who waited beside a pool for almost 40 years. His name is not even given to us. He is one of the lost faces of an old story. But his story has outlived 1,000 famous names because it is, quietly, the story of almost everyone. There was a pool in the city of Jerusalem, near a gate where the sheep were brought in, and the pool had a name that meant House of Mercy. People believed that, now and then, the waters there would stir, and that the first one into the water when it moved would be healed of whatever sickness held them. So all around that pool lay a great crowd of the broken, the blind, the lame, the withered, people whose lives had narrowed down to a single hope and a single fear that the water would move and they would not be fast enough. And there was one man who had been lying there for 38 years. Think about that number for a moment. 38 years beside a place where miracles were rumored to happen and never once reaching the water in time. 38 years is long enough for hope itself to become a habit, and then for the habit to wear thin, and then for even the wearing thin to become ordinary. By the time we meet him, he is not raging against his fate. He is not weeping at the edge of the pool. He has simply made a home out of helplessness. He has built a life inside his own waiting. Then one day a man stopped in front of him. The man was Jesus, and he had walked into that crowd of the suffering, and of all the people there, he stopped at this one. He looked at a man who had given up so completely that giving up no longer even felt like a decision. And he did not begin with comfort. He did not begin with a sermon or a rebuke or a promise. He began with a question so simple and so piercing that it has been echoing through human hearts ever since. Do you want to be made well? Now stop and feel the strangeness of that question. It almost sounds unkind. The man is lying there, paralyzed after 38 years. Of course he wants to be healed. Who would not? And yet the question was not asked out of ignorance. It was asked because true healing always begins in exactly that place, the place where the soul has to decide whether it still wants to be free or whether it has quietly made peace with its own captivity. Because there is a kind of suffering that becomes a strange kind of safety. The wound starts to explain things. It explains why you never dared to hope, why you never dared to love again, why you stopped reaching for the life you once wanted. And to be healed would mean letting go of the explanation. It would mean you could no longer hide behind the familiar shape of your own pain. So the question lands on you too, exactly as it landed on him. Not, do you want to hurt a little less today? Not, do you want a moment of relief, a kind word, someone who finally understands? But something far deeper and far more frightening. Do you actually want to be made well, all the way down, in the place you have been avoiding for years? Perhaps you are afraid of your own answer. That is not weakness, that is honesty. Because to say yes is to admit that the wound was never meant to be a permanent address. It is to release the strange comfort of the familiar ache. And I will not pretend that is a small thing to release. When something has been with you long enough, even your suffering can start to feel like a friend. But hear what the old prophet Isaiah said about the one who comes to heal. The Spirit of the Lord was upon him, and he was sent to bind up the brokenhearted, to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim freedom for the captives, to comfort all who mourn. Sent to bind up the brokenhearted, not to lecture them about their wounds, not to tell them to be stronger, sent to bind, to kneel down beside the bleeding, and to close the wound with his own hands. And if that is what he was sent to do, then how could your pain ever have been meant to become your eternal home? So, when the voice of grace asks you the same question it asked the man at the pool, do not answer too quickly, and do not answer out of habit either. Let the question reach the part of you that has gone quiet. Do you want to be made well? Not just soothed, not just managed, not just understood for an afternoon, but healed. In the room of your heart you swore you would never open again. And notice what the healer did not do. He did not say, get up only if your faith is strong enough. He did not say, prove to me that you deserve this, he said. Rise, take up your mat and walk. And the man who had not stood for 38 years stood. The thing that had defined him for almost 4 decades was undone in a single sentence, because the one speaking had more authority over the man's future than the man's entire past. This is the first thing I need you to understand, because everything else depends on it. The length of your suffering is not a measurement of how impossible your healing is. 38 years did not make him a hopeless case. It only made his healing more astonishing. And whatever number you would put on your own waiting, however long you have lain beside your own pool, telling yourself this is simply how it is now, that number does not bind the one who is asking you the question. He is not asking you to decorate your wound. He is not asking you to cover it with the appearance of strength and call that maturity. He is asking to touch it. The prophet wrote that the Lord heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And he does this not because brokenness impresses him, but because his heart cannot bear to watch you bleed in silence one more season. So let us begin there, with the honest answer to a hard question, with a soul that is tired of stepping around the glass on the floor, and with a healer who has been standing in front of you for longer than you knew, waiting for you to stop calling your captivity peace. Because you were not made to be a locked room full of hidden grief. You were not made to befriend your pain and arrange your wounds like furniture you have learned to live around. There is a promise, very old, spoken through the prophet Ezekiel, where God says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. A heart of flesh. Not a harder shell, not thicker walls, not a more impressive defense, but a heart that can feel again without being destroyed by what it feels. That is the work that wants to be done in you, not a thin bandage smoothed over the surface, a transformation of the very thing that has gone hard inside. And here is the gentleness of it, the part that should let you breathe. The one who wants to do this work does not arrive like a surgeon eager to cut. He comes like a gardener who has walked these grounds before and knows every root, every dry branch, and every fragile new shoot pushing up through the soil. A gardener does not tear up the whole garden because a few corners have withered. He waters, he prunes, he tends. He breathes life back into the place that looked like it had no spring left in it. There is a saying that every branch which bears fruit, the gardener prunes, so that it may bear still more. The touch may ache, but it is the ache of restoration, not the violence of destruction. So stop for today, calling the hardness of your heart by the name of protection. Stop calling the inability to feel by the name of peace. Stop calling the high walls around you by the name of wisdom. What you actually long for is a heart that is gentle without being weak, a soul that knows how to love and still knows how to discern, a spirit open enough to let the light in and strong enough to refuse to become a home for the dark. And the invitation is simpler than you fear. You do not have to put your heart in order before you come. You do not have to stop trembling first or make your wounds look beautiful before you let them be seen. There is an invitation that has outlasted every empire that ever heard it. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Notice the words, the weary and the burdened, not the rested and the ready. You are invited precisely as you are, tired, unsure, perhaps still doubting, perhaps still hurting, but willing, just willing, to be loved. That is the whole beginning of it, not a performance, a willingness. The man at the pool did not heal himself. He simply stopped agreeing with his own captivity long enough to answer one question honestly. And so the river of his life began to move again after 38 years of standing still. Now, having said all that about the heart, I have to tell you about something I have watched happen to people far stronger than they ever admitted, because the next part of this journey is not about the wound that screams. It is about the silence that comes after the wound learns to behave. There are mornings when the sunlight still falls gently across the window, and the birds outside still sing, and the whole world keeps moving exactly as it should. And yet inside you it feels like a room that has not been opened in a long, long time. Cold still, a little stale with all the breath you have been holding. You wake up, you do what has to be done, you say the words that need to be said, you smile for the people who need to see that you are all right. And underneath all of it, there is a quiet emptiness you cannot quite name, and you have stopped trying to name it, because naming it might mean having to feel it. I do not take that lightly, and neither should you. When joy no longer rises in the morning, when a new day arrives and your spirit feels only the weight of it, when the dawn that used to stir something in you now just signals the start of another round of carrying, that is not simple tiredness. That is the deepest part of you crying out very softly for something it has been missing. The old poet wrote, "My soul thirsts for God, for the living God." And a thirst like that cannot be satisfied by busyness, or by another task finished, or by telling yourself one more time that everything will pass on its own. Some things do not pass on their own. They only sink deeper and wait for the day your heart is too tired to keep holding them down. You have tried to be strong by continuing, by working, by enduring, by meeting every expectation and quietly hiding everything that hurt. But enduring is not always healing. Staying busy is not always moving forward, and silence, the kind you have practiced so well, is not always peace. Sometimes silence is just a wound that has learned to stop complaining. Let me tell you about a man who once stood at the very summit of his own strength and then fell apart anyway. His name was Elijah, and he was a prophet, which is to say he was a man whose entire life was built on hearing from God and saying it out loud, no matter who was listening. There came a day when Elijah stood alone on a mountain called Carmel, facing hundreds of prophets of a false god, in front of an entire watching nation. He prayed, and fire fell from heaven, actual fire in front of everyone, answering his single prayer when 450 others had cried out all day to nothing. It was the highest moment of his life. The crowd fell on their faces. The drought broke and the rain came pouring down. If anyone had ever earned the right to feel unshakable, it was Elijah on that day. And then, almost immediately, a single threat from a single angry queen sent him running for his life into the wilderness. The man who had called down fire from the sky was now hiding in the desert, terrified and exhausted, and he sat down under a small tree, a broom bush, and he asked to die. He said, "It is enough now, take my life." The man at the top of the mountain and the man under the broom tree were the same man, only one day apart. That is how close the summit and the collapse can be. That is how quickly a soul can run out of fuel, even a soul that has known unmistakable power. Now watch very carefully what God did, because this is the part that changes everything. God did not appear in thunder to rebuke him. God did not say, "Why are you so weak?" after everything you just saw. God did not demand that Elijah pull himself together and get back to work. Instead, an angel came and touched him, gently, while he slept, and there was bread baking on hot stones and a jar of water beside his head, and the only instruction was this: "Get up and eat." So he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel came a second time and touched him again and said, "Get up and eat, because the journey is too much for you." The journey is too much for you. Heaven looked at an exhausted man and did not say, "Try harder." It said, "Here is food, here is water, rest. The road ahead is long and you cannot walk it on empty." Sometimes the holiest thing your soul needs is not another push to rise immediately. Sometimes it is to be fed, to be allowed to rest, to be reminded in the quietest possible way that you have not been abandoned in your exhaustion. I tell you Elijah's story because you may have started mistaking your striving for faith. It is an easy mistake to make. You carry everything. You ask for nothing. You keep going long after you have run dry, and you call it maturity. But faith is not carrying the whole world on your shoulders and refusing to set it down. Faith is daring to hand over what you are too tired to keep holding. Faith is being able to say, "I need help," without feeling ashamed of the need. You were not built to be a soul that saves itself. When the breath of life first entered you, it did not come with a destiny of self-rescue. It came with an invitation to walk with someone, to lean, to rest, to put your burden down before it crushes the very heart it is sitting on. There is a line from an old letter that says, "Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you." Read it again and notice the word all, not the manageable portion, not only the troubles you think are respectable enough to bring, not the polished, presentable worries, all of it. The whole tangled weight that has been quietly bending your shoulders lower with every passing year. The disappointment hidden under your sense of responsibility. The grief you never gave a name. The tears you swallowed on the days when nobody thought to ask if you were really all right. And here is the thing about that kind of honesty. It does not push you away from the one who loves you. It draws him closer. The old poet wrote that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Near to the brokenhearted. So do not believe the lie that your brokenness is what separates you from him. It is exactly in your brokenness that he bends down lowest to bind up the thing you could never have healed by yourself. So if all you can manage today is the smallest prayer, then start there. If all you can do is sit in silence with no words at all, then simply sit. And if the tears come, do not chase them away as if they were enemies. Let them be a river that finally carries to the surface what has been buried for too long. You will not drown in them. You will be lifted out of them, little by little, until you remember how to breathe in the rhythm of peace again. Because rest, the real kind, is not failure. Rest is the place where new life begins. The man under the broom tree did not stay there. After he was fed, after he slept, after the journey was made bearable again, he walked, and on a mountain God met him, not in wind or earthquake or fire, but in a gentle whisper. That is worth remembering. The same God who answered with fire on Carmel chose to restore his broken prophet with a whisper in a cave. There is a time for fire, and there is a time for a whisper, and the whisper is not weakness. It is intimacy. It is the voice of someone who has come close enough that he no longer needs to shout. Now you might be thinking, that is fine for Elijah. He was a prophet. He had a name. He had a place in the story. But I have wandered too far. I have failed too often. I am not the kind of person heaven goes looking for. And that is exactly the lie I want to take apart next, because there is a woman in a very old story who believed precisely that about herself, and the way she was found in the desert tells us almost everything about how we are seen. Her name was Hagar, and she was a servant, which in her world meant she was barely a person at all. She had no power over her own life. She had been used in someone else's plan, and when that plan turned bitter, she was the one who paid for it. She was driven out, pregnant and alone, into a wilderness with no water and no future, carrying a child she had not chosen her circumstances around. If anyone in the whole of human memory had reason to believe she had been forgotten, overlooked, thrown away by both people and heaven, it was this woman weeping by herself in the desert with nothing left. And it was there, in the exact place she felt most invisible, that she was found. Not in a palace, not surrounded by anyone who mattered. In the one place where she was certain no one was watching, she was met and spoken to and given a promise. And when it was over, this servant woman, who had been treated as if she were nothing, did something no king in that whole story had done. She gave God a name. She called him the God who sees me, the God who sees. She did not say the God who saves, or the God who is mighty, or the God who is far above. She said, "You are the one who saw me here when I thought I was alone, and that is the name I will know you by." Hold on to that, because you have probably lived too long through your outward eyes, the eyes that only see your circumstances, your failures, the doors that closed, the things others said, the life you do not yet have. Those eyes see a desert and conclude that there is nothing here and no one is coming. But there is another kind of seeing, and it runs in both directions. You can be seen even when you are certain you are invisible. When no one understands your story, you are understood. When you have run out of strength to explain the weight you carry, you are still heard. The eyes of heaven do not look at you to find your faults and frighten you with them. They look at you to remind you that your life still carries value, even in the wilderness, even now, even when you have stopped expecting anyone to notice. So that is the first answer to the lie that you have wandered too far to be found. You can be found, but I want to take it one step further, because being seen is one thing and being sought is another. It is a beautiful thing to know that heaven notices you. It is an almost unbearable thing to discover that heaven comes looking for you, even after you have walked away. For that, there is the strangest love story in all of Scripture, the story of a prophet named Hosea and a woman named Gomer. God told Hosea to marry a woman who would be unfaithful to him and to love her anyway, because his marriage was going to become a living picture of how God loves a people who keep wandering off. And Gomer did wander. She left, she gave herself to others. She fell so far that by every ordinary measure, she was finished, used up, beyond reclaiming, a woman who had thrown away every reason anyone might have had to want her back. And Hosea went and bought her back. Sit with how scandalous that is. He did not wait at home, arms crossed, for her to come crawling back and beg. He did not write her off as a lesson learned. He went to the place where she had ended up in her shame, and he paid a price to bring her home and restore her dignity. That is not weak love. That is not love that tolerates darkness because it does not know any better. That is redeeming love, love that is willing to walk into the broken place to call the beloved back to who she was always meant to be. And the reason that story exists is so that you would understand something about how you are pursued. Not because you have never wandered, but because you still belong. Not because you have never failed, but because there is a love that is stronger than the exile your shame keeps trying to send you into. There is a sentence from the prophet Jeremiah where God says, "I have loved you with an everlasting love." Everlasting, which means it does not run out in the seasons when you are weak. It does not expire on the days you are ashamed of. It was there before you wandered. It followed you while you wandered, and it will be there when you finally turn around. Now think about how those two truths fit together. The God who sees you in the desert is also the God who comes to buy you back from it. You are not merely noticed, you are wanted, and that changes the whole shape of coming home. Because it means you do not have to clean yourself up first to make yourself presentable. The love does not begin when you become worthy of it. It is the reason you can become whole at all. This is the part where most people hesitate, right at the threshold, and I understand exactly why. There is a quiet belief, almost everyone carries it, that God is the kind of guest who only shows up after the house has been perfectly cleaned. So we wait. We try to tidy ourselves first. We rehearse the prayer until it sounds acceptable. We promise ourselves we will come once we have stopped trembling, once the wounds have scabbed over, once we look strong enough to be received. And so we never come at all, because that day never quite arrives. But the truth runs the other way. He steps in while the dust of the road is still on your feet, while the house is still a mess, while the old memories still ache in the back rooms. He does not come to reopen your failures as evidence in a trial against you. He comes to lift the weight you have been carrying for far too long. There is a line that says, "As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who turn toward him." And that compassion is not cold, and it does not stand at a distance with its arms folded while you struggle alone. It bends down, it comes close, it waits patiently for you to stop hiding and finally open the door you locked out of shame. And when it comes, it does not come like a storm that shatters you. It comes like the first rain on dry ground. There is an image in the old songs of God coming down like rain on freshly cut grass, like showers that water the earth. Think about what rain does to a land that has cracked from drought. It does not arrive violently. It soaks in slowly. It softens what had gone hard. It calls life back up out of soil that looked finished. That is how grace moves into the barren places of a person. Not by breaking you further, but by saturating gently the ground you had given up on. There is one more thing about that threshold I do not want you to miss, because it removes the last excuse. You may feel that you do not even know how to pray, that you have no words left, that when you try to reach out, nothing comes but silence and a kind of groaning that will not turn into language. There is a line for exactly that. It says the Spirit helps us in our weakness, because there are times when we do not know how to pray as we ought, and so the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. Do you understand what that means? It means that even when you have run out of words, heaven is not silent over your pain. Even when all you have is the wordless ache, that ache is being carried, translated, and heard. You do not have to pray beautifully. You only have to be honest. If all you can whisper is, "I am tired," that single sentence is enough for grace to begin to flow. So, we have walked through the first stretch of the road. The wound that learned to go quiet, and the question, do you want to be made well? The weariness that masquerades as strength, and the man under the broom tree who was fed instead of scolded. The God who sees you in the desert, and the love that comes to buy you back from it. And the threshold, where you finally understand that you may come exactly as you are. But here is where many people get stuck, and I do not want you to get stuck here. Because once you say yes, once you actually let the healing begin, you discover that real healing is rarely the quick, dramatic thing you imagined. It goes deeper than you wanted, and it sometimes asks more of you than you expected. And there is a story of a great and powerful man who almost missed his own healing entirely because it did not arrive in the form his pride was waiting for. His name was Naaman, and he was a commander, the head of an army, a man covered in honor and reputation, and the kind of strength that makes other men step aside when he walks into a room. But underneath the fine robes that announced his rank, he carried a disease that none of his power could touch. He had leprosy. All his status could buy him everything except the one thing he needed, and that quiet, hidden ruin under his armor is a picture of something many strong people carry. The world sees the rank. It does not see the thing rotting underneath. When word reached him that there was a prophet in another land who could heal him, he set out with horses and chariots and a fortune in silver and gold, the way an important man arranges an important transaction. And when he arrived at the prophet's door, he was already imagining the scene. Surely the holy man would come out to him, wave his hand over the diseased skin, call dramatically on his God, and perform something grand and worthy of a commander's dignity. Instead, the prophet did not even come outside. He sent a messenger with a single, almost insulting instruction. Go and wash in the Jordan River 7 times, and your flesh will be restored. Naaman was furious. He had pictured ceremony, and he got a muddy little river and a servant's errand. Were there not greater rivers back home? He raged. Cleaner ones, more impressive ones. He nearly turned around and went home still sick because the cure required something his pride could not stand. It required him to get down into ordinary water in front of everyone and do a small, humbling thing again and again with nothing to show for it until the 7th time. It was his own servants who finally talked sense into him. If the prophet had asked you to do something great, they said, you would have done it gladly. How much more then, when he only asks you to wash and be clean? So he went down. He let go of the picture he had of how this was supposed to look. He set aside the robe of honor that he had been using without realizing it to cover the place where he was sick. And he stepped into the river once, twice, 7 times, doing the humble thing his pride had nearly refused. And when he came up the 7th time, his skin was clean, like the skin of a young child, made new. I tell you this story because some of your own healing is going to begin the same way. Not with the grand cinematic deliverance you have been waiting for, but with something quieter and more humbling. It may ask you to lay down the pride that insists you must always be fine. It may ask you to stop demanding that your healing arrive on your terms, in the dramatic form you scripted in your head. It may even ask you to take off the robe of honor you have been using to hide the very place that is wounded, the busyness, the competence, the carefully managed image. And when you are finally willing to step into the plain water of obedience, even when it feels too small and too undignified to matter, that is exactly where the thing human strength could never accomplish gets done. Because real restoration does not stop at the surface. This is the part people most often misunderstand. They think healing means the pain simply gets quieter, the tears finally stop, and one day you can smile again without that ache underneath. But the deeper work does not settle for smoothing things over. It goes to the source, to the place where the fear first took root, to the spot where doubt settled in like dust and never left, to the quiet belief planted somewhere long ago that you would never really be whole again. The promise spoken through Isaiah is not a small one. Behold, God says, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? A new thing, not merely a change in your circumstances, but a life waking up again from the inside. A clouded vision washed clear, a hardened heart growing soft, a soul relearning how to breathe. And here is the mercy in the method. He does not rush you the way the world rushes you. The world wants you healed quickly, so you can be useful again. It wants you to stop hurting on schedule, so that no one around you has to feel uncomfortable. It wants you to cover your wounds with the look of strength and call that progress. But this kind of healing does not work by pressure. It works by love. Each day, a different room of you is touched. Today, maybe the fear of being abandoned. Tomorrow, the memory that taught you to blame yourself. Another day, the weariness that quietly stole your joy and even your prayers. Nothing is torn out by force. It is loosened slowly by grace until you trust enough to place it back into hands that can actually hold it. There is a line in the most famous of the old songs. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness. That is the pace of it, not dragged out of the dark all at once, but led step by patient step until you learn how to walk steadily in the light. So do not be afraid when the healing leads you back to places you have spent years avoiding. You are not being taken there to be drowned in the past. You are being taken there to redeem what you thought was lost for good. Some of the tears you have cried will become streams that wash away confusion. Some of the very moments where you felt weakest will turn out to be the places where a strength not your own was most clearly revealed. There is a line where God says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Made perfect in weakness, which means the place where you trembled most is not the place to be ashamed of. Surrendered into the right hands, it can become the very altar where you are restored. And nothing you hand over goes to waste. Every wound you surrender is used. Every loss you lay down is taken up and turned towards something. There is a sentence people quote often and understand poorly. All things work together for good for those who love God. Now hear what that does and does not mean. It does not mean the painful things were good. It does not call evil good or pretend that what broke you was somehow a gift. It means there is someone with the power to take what was broken and weave it into a testimony of his kindness. The loss is not erased, it is redeemed. The wound is not pretended away. It is turned into the very place compassion grows in you, so that one day you will be gentle with someone else's pain in a way you never could have been before yours. So this is the shape of true restoration. It goes to the root. It humbles you the way the river humbled the commander. It moves at the pace of love rather than the pace of pressure. And it wastes nothing. He gives, the prophet said, a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, a garment of praise instead of a spirit of heaviness. Beauty for ashes, not a denial that the ashes were real, but a refusal to let the ashes be the end of the story. Now, having said all of that, I have to turn and tell you something that might feel like a different subject, but is really the same one. Because once your heart begins to heal, it becomes precious again, and tender again, and capable of being wounded again. And a heart that has come back to life needs to be guarded, not with walls, but with wisdom. There is a danger that comes precisely to people who have just begun to feel again. And it does not usually come with a sword. It comes with a familiar voice and a gentle smile. And the clearest warning about it is hidden inside the tragedy of one of the strongest men who ever lived. His name was Samson, and he was famous for a strength that bordered on the impossible. He tore a lion apart with his hands. He broke ropes as if they were threads. Whole armies could not hold him. On any battlefield, against any visible enemy, he was unstoppable. His weakness was never going to be a sword swung in the open. His weakness was the place where he let his guard down. And it came to him not through war, but through closeness, through a woman named Delilah, who learned that the way to defeat him was not to fight him, but to be near him. She did not overpower him. She wore him down. Day after day she asked, gently, persistently, where the secret of his great strength lay. She made it sound like love. She made the questions feel like intimacy, and little by little, worn smooth by the constant pressure of someone he had let too close, he gave the secret away. He told her that his strength was tied to his vow, symbolized by his uncut hair, and while he slept in her lap, she had it cut. And here is the most haunting line in the whole tragedy. When he woke, he did not even know that his strength had left him. The man who had never lost a fight did not feel the moment he was undone, because the thing that defeated him had been welcomed in as a comfort. That story was not written to make you afraid of love. It was written to teach you that spiritual strength has to be guarded, and that the gravest danger to a strong soul is almost never the obvious enemy at the gate. It is the familiar voice you have invited inside. Not everyone who reaches your most intimate spaces should be allowed to touch what has been placed within you. Not every gentle voice has earned a throne in your heart. There is an old piece of wisdom that says, guard your heart above all else, for everything in your life flows from it. And to guard your heart means, in part, to be honest about who you are letting plant seeds in your mind, your emotions, and your faith. Now I am not telling you to wall yourself off and trust no one. That is its own kind of prison, and a heart that has just learned to feel again was not healed so it could lock itself away. The longing for closeness is not a flaw. You were made with the capacity to love and to be connected, and that longing is good. But here is the test, and it is a simple one. True love will never pull you away from your own light. Real companionship will not dim your soul, weaken your prayers, or slowly teach you to doubt your own worth. So when someone comes into your life, do not look only at the words, the smiles, the gestures of care on the surface. Look deeper and ask the quiet question, after spending time near this person, is the best in me being stirred awake or slowly put out? Do I walk away clearer or more confused, steadier or more restless, gentler or somehow harder than before? Because darkness rarely asks you to abandon everything good all at once. It is far more patient than that. It only needs you to grow a little careless, to compromise a little, to dim yourself just slightly to be accepted, again and again, until your peace has quietly drained away and you tell yourself it must just be tiredness. There are influences that enter a life not with loud threats, but with a comfortable familiarity. Words that sound wise but slowly cool your faith. Advice that feels protective but plants doubt in what you know to be true. Relationships that subtly require you to shrink in order to belong. The old letters warn, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Test them, not by their charm, but by their fruit. There is a way to tell the difference, and you already have the instrument for it, if you will use it. There is a kind of wisdom that comes from above, and an old letter describes it precisely. It is first pure, then peace-loving, gentle, willing to listen, full of mercy and good fruit. So pay attention to what a voice leaves behind in you. What comes from the light may correct you, but it will not humiliate your soul. It may expose what is wrong, but it leads you toward repentance and restoration and peace, not into confusion and shame and distance. There is a line that says, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts," and the word for rule there is the word for an umpire, the one who makes the call. So let peace be the umpire. When peace begins to leave a connection, do not rush to silence the warning just because you are afraid of losing the person. There are things you may be calling love that, if they keep pulling you away from your light, need to be brought out where you can see them honestly. This is not coldness. This is the opposite of coldness. When you let wisdom filter what gets to influence you, you do not lose your ability to love. You are freed from the bonds that disguise themselves as love. There are people you will be taught to love from a healthy distance. There are words you will learn to hear without taking them into your heart. There are hands that will be gently lifted out of your life, not to leave you lonely, but to make room for companionship that actually comes from the light. The people who are meant for you may correct you with the truth, and they may not always soothe your feelings, but the fruit of their presence will be clarity, peace, humility, and goodness. There is a line that says, "You will know them by their fruit," not by what they say, by what they leave growing in your soul. So when you do not know whom to trust, keep your ear close to the voice you have learned to recognize. When your heart is torn between affection and unease, look there first, before you look at how others might react. When you sense your peace quietly leaving, stop and ask why. The warning will not always come like thunder. More often it comes as a small uneasiness, a silence in the heart, a sense that something is not quite pure even when everything on the outside looks fine. Do not ignore those signals, and when you are unsure, do not act out of fear. Do not cut ties in anger, and do not stay only out of pity or out of the dread of being alone. Bring the relationship, the advice, the influence into the light, and let the one who sees what you cannot see show you which connections need healing, which boundaries need building, and which doors need to be closed so that your soul can be safe. Now, I want you to notice something about everything we have just said, because it quietly opens the door to the most important turn in this whole journey. Did you hear how often the warning came down to one thing? Where are you looking? What are you letting in? What is your gaze resting on? Samson's downfall began with where he let his attention settle. The test of every voice was what it left behind once you had taken it in through your eyes and ears and let it sit in your heart. And that is not an accident, because the soul has gates, and the most important of all of them is the eye. There is a sentence that, once you understand it, changes the way you live. The eye, it says, is the lamp of the body. And to understand what that means is to understand how light gets in and how it goes out, and why the whole second half of your healing depends on learning to see again. Your eyes are not only the place where the world comes in, they are a quiet doorway into the house of your soul. Think about how the chain actually works. What you gaze upon long enough becomes what you think about. What you think about long enough becomes what you begin to want. And what you want in the end quietly directs your steps. That is the whole sequence, and it begins at the eye. This is why the old teaching says the eye is the lamp of the body, and adds, if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. It is not really a sentence about eyesight. It is a sentence about the direction of the soul. Turn your gaze toward what is pure, and your inner life is fed with light. Let your gaze grow comfortable resting on what darkens you, and your peace will weaken before you even notice it has begun to fade. To see how true this is, consider a man who by every account loved God deeply and who fell anyway, not on a battlefield, but through a single unguarded look. His name was David. This is the shepherd boy who faced a giant with a sling and won. The songwriter whose words people have prayed for thousands of years. The man described as being after God's own heart. If anyone seemed safe from a fall, it was David. And yet one evening, when he should have been out with his army where his responsibility lay, he stayed home, idle on the roof of his palace. And from that roof, his eyes rested on something that was not his to look at. He did not have to keep looking, but he did, and from a look came desire, from desire came a choice, from the choice came concealment, and from the concealment a chain of ruin that reached far beyond himself and brought pain to many people. That story was not preserved so that we would despise David. It was preserved so that we would understand a sobering truth. Even a person who has walked closely with God still has to guard the gates of the soul. A heart that loves the light still needs daily watchfulness. A life that once carried holy fire can still grow weak if it lets its gaze wander into a place where a trap has been laid. The fall did not begin with the act. It began with the eye on a quiet evening in an unguarded moment when looking away would have changed everything. Now set beside David another man in a very different situation who made the opposite choice so that you can see both ends of the same principle. His name was Joseph. He had been betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, carried far from home into a foreign land, and through it all he had somehow kept his integrity until he ended up serving in the house of a powerful man named Potiphar. And there he faced a temptation that was not a single glance but a steady pressure repeated day after day. Potiphar's wife wanted him, and she did not ask once. She asked again and again, and the circumstances were arranged to make it easy, and there was no crowd watching, no thunder from heaven warning him. Just a quiet, recurring choice with no one around to see what he decided. And Joseph said, "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" He did not stay in the room to negotiate with it. He did not let himself keep looking at the thing that could pull his heart away. One day, when she caught hold of his garment, he left the garment in her hand and ran. He literally fled, and in fleeing he kept the lamp inside him lit. That faithfulness in the short term cost him everything. It landed him in prison for years on a false accusation. But it never moved him out of the larger story he was being kept inside of. The light he guarded in secret when no one was watching eventually became the wisdom that would save not only his own family, but an entire nation from famine. So there are the two men, side by side David, who stayed where he should not have been and let his eyes linger, and watched a single look unravel into tragedy. And Joseph, who turned away from what was not his, who refused to keep looking, who fled the room and kept his soul, and watched that hidden faithfulness become the rescue of many. The difference between them was not strength. David was strong. The difference was the gate of the eyes and what each one chose to do with a look. This is why an old prayer asks so specifically, "Turn my eyes away from worthless things and preserve my life according to your word." Notice that the one praying does not trust his own strength to handle it. He asks for help to turn his eyes, and there is a man in another old story who put it even more firmly. "I have made a covenant with my eyes," he said, a covenant, a binding agreement with himself about what he would and would not let his gaze rest on. That is not the harshness of a person who hates life. That is the wisdom of a person who treasures the lamp inside him too much to be careless with it. And here is the part that turns this from a warning into a kindness, because there is more than one way for the eyes to wound the soul. Some gazes harm you because of what is impure in them, but others harm you simply because they teach you to see yourself wrongly. You look at the lives of other people and conclude that you are behind, that you are late, that everyone is further along than you. You look at the standards the world keeps holding up and decide that you do not measure up, that you lack worth. You look back at your own past and become convinced you can never change. You look so long at the wound that you forget to look at the one who heals. Those gazes are quieter than the obvious temptations, and they do just as much damage because they slowly rewrite the way you see your own life. Remember what happened to Peter on the water. He stepped out of the boat and did the impossible. He walked on the waves, as long as his eyes stayed on the one who had called him. And the moment his attention turned to the wind and the storm, he began to sink. He did not sink because the storm got worse. He sank because his gaze shifted. That is the whole lesson in a single image. Your eyes are not only looking at what is around you, they are quietly deciding where your soul places its trust. Keep looking at the storm, and you will start to go under. Turn your eyes back to the one who can hold you, and the saving hand is always closer than the wave. So, this is the invitation hidden inside that strange little sentence about the eye and the lamp. Offer your eyes back to the one who made them. Make your own covenant with them, not as a grim restriction, but as a way of protecting the light. Learn to turn your gaze away from what clouds your heart. Learn to stop before curiosity becomes a doorway. Learn to ask honestly, does this bring me closer to the light or quietly draw me into the dimness? Does this leave me more loving, more peaceful, more pure? Or does it leave me restless, craving, comparing, angry, and somehow more empty than before? There is a guide for what to set your eyes upon, an old and beautiful one. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, think on these things. Feed your gaze on what brings life, and your heart will not have to spend itself fighting seeds that should never have been planted in the first place. Purity does not make you poorer, it makes you brighter. But here is something you may have already begun to suspect, and it is the doorway into the deepest part of all of this. The problem is not only what you choose to look at. The problem is that the way you see has itself been wounded. You have spent so long looking at life through fear, through grief, through old disappointment, that the very lens has been scratched. And sometimes what needs healing is not the heart alone, and not even just the discipline of where you point your eyes. Sometimes what needs healing is the seeing itself, and for that there is a story of an army, a frightened servant, and a prayer that opened a man's eyes onto a world he had been standing inside the whole time without ever seeing. It happened to the prophet Elisha and his young servant. An enemy king, furious that the prophet kept thwarting his plans, sent an army by night to surround the city where Elisha was staying. Horses, chariots, a great force, encircling the place in the dark. And in the morning the servant went outside, looked up, and saw nothing but soldiers in every direction. His heart dropped. He cried out in despair, "What are we going to do? We are surrounded. We are finished." With his natural eyes he saw only the trap, only the danger, only the certainty of defeat. But the prophet was calm, and what he said is one of the strangest, most freeing sentences in any old story. "Do not be afraid," he said, "for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." The servant must have thought the old man had lost his mind. "More than them, there is no one with us. We are 2 men against an army." And then the prophet did not argue. He prayed. He simply asked, "Lord, open his eyes that he may see." And the young man's eyes were opened, and he looked again at the very same hills he had just been staring at in terror, and now he saw them filled with horses and chariots of fire, a host of heaven surrounding the prophet, a protection that had been there the entire time, closer than the enemy, only invisible to eyes that had not yet been opened. Nothing about the situation changed in that moment. The enemy army was still there. What changed was the servant's seeing, and that is the whole point. There is a kind of healing that does not alter your circumstances at all, but transforms what you are able to perceive within them. There is an old line that says, "We look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are unseen, because what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." Your natural eyes report the surface, the lack, the threats, the closed doors. But there is a deeper sight, and when it opens, you discover that grace was surrounding you the whole time, that protection was already present, that hands were at work in places the eyes of fear could never reach. So here is something worth asking for, and most people never think to ask for it. Do not only pray for your circumstances to change, pray for the way you see to be healed, because some people are rescued out of their hard situations and still carry the eyes of fear into the next one. Some step into a whole new season and keep looking at everything through the lens of an old wound. Some receive real blessings and cannot enjoy them because their inner eye has been trained to scan only for the next loss. There is an old prayer that says simply, "Open my eyes, that I may see wonderful things in your law." Open my eyes. It is the most important thing the servant's master asks for, and it may be the most important thing you can ask for too. Lord, open my eyes, not only so I can see the road ahead, so I can see life again, but there is something honest I have to tell you about how this opening tends to happen, because it does not always come all at once, and if you do not know that, you may give up too soon. There was a blind man in a village called Bethesda, whom they brought to Jesus, begging him to touch the man and restore his sight. And what happened next is unlike almost any other healing in the records, because it happened in two stages. First, Jesus took the man by the hand and led him out of the village, away from the crowd, away from the noise. Then he touched his eyes and asked him a question. "Do you see anything?" And the man looked up and said, "I see people, but they look like trees, walking around. Light had come, shapes had appeared, but it was not yet clear." So Jesus laid his hands on the man's eyes a second time and looked at him intently, and this time the man saw everything clearly, fully restored. I want you to sit with that, because it might be the most comforting thing in this entire journey. Sometimes healing comes in stages. Sometimes the one who could do it all in an instant chooses instead to do it gradually, with a second touch and a third. Sometimes he leads you out of the village first, away from the crowd, away from the noise that has confused your vision, into a quieter place where he can work without interruption. And sometimes, after the first touch, you will still see only blurred shapes, people like trees, light without clarity, and you will be tempted to conclude that nothing happened or that you are beyond fixing. But blurred sight is not failure. Blurred sight is the middle of the process. The hand is still on your eyes. He is not finished. So do not lose heart if today everything is still a little out of focus. The first touch has come, the second is on its way, and there is one more man whose blindness teaches the opposite and equally important lesson, because he could not see it all with his eyes, and yet he saw more clearly than the whole crowd around him. His name was Bartimaeus, and he sat begging by the roadside near Jericho. He had no sight to speak of, but one day he heard that a particular teacher was passing by, and something in him recognized that this was the moment, that hope itself was walking past him on the road. So he began to shout, and the crowd around him told him to be quiet, to stop making a scene, to know his place. And he shouted louder. He could not see the face of the one he was calling to, but his soul recognized the footsteps of mercy, and he would not be silenced. When Jesus called him over, Bartimaeus did something small and enormous. He threw off his cloak. For a beggar, the cloak was his most valuable possession, the thing he sat on, the thing that held whatever coins were thrown to him, the symbol of the only life he had known. And he threw it aside and got up and came, and his eyes were opened. But notice what he did then. He did not simply walk off into his new sight to enjoy it. He began to follow the one who had healed him. He had seen by faith before he ever saw with his eyes. And once his eyes were opened, he used them to keep his gaze fixed on the one worth following. So look at the three of them together, because between them they hold the whole truth about the healing of sight. The servant of Elisha, who needed his eyes opened to perceive a protection that was already there. The blind man of Bethsaida, who reminds you that the opening sometimes comes in stages, and that blurry is not the same as broken. And Bartimaeus, who shows you that the eyes of faith can recognize hope on the road long before the eyes of the body see anything at all, and that the point of regaining your sight is to keep it fixed on the right thing. Heaven was always around the servant. The second touch was always coming for the blind man. And mercy was always passing close enough to hear the cry of the beggar by the road. Now, All of this raises a question that goes even deeper than how you see the world. And it is the question I want to turn to next. Because for many people, the most distorted vision of all is not the way they see their circumstances or even other people. It is the way they see themselves. And there is a moment long ago in a humble house in a small town when a wise old man almost made the most natural mistake in the world and was corrected by a single sentence that tells you exactly how heaven looks at a human life. The old man was the prophet Samuel, and he had been sent to a man named Jesse to anoint one of his sons as the future king. So the sons were brought out before him one by one. The first to come was tall and impressive, exactly what a king is supposed to look like, and Samuel took one glance and thought, "Surely this is the one." And he was stopped. The word that came to him is one of the most quietly revolutionary sentences ever spoken. "Do not look at his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. People look at the outward appearance. The Lord looks at the heart. So the impressive sons were passed over, every one of them, until they finally remembered the youngest, who had not even been called in from the field, who was out tending the sheep, the one no one had thought worth including. And that overlooked boy David was the one. The world notices the stain before it notices the seed of life. It sees the past before it sees the grace. It sizes up the weakness before it perceives the potential buried underneath. But heaven does not see the way people see. And this matters enormously for you, because you have probably learned to look at yourself the way the world looks, and to call that honesty. You read your own life like a report of everything that has gone wrong. You see yourself as the sum of every moment you were late, every time you doubted, every place you were weak or lost or afraid. But that is not how you are seen. You are not called by the name of your failures. There is a line that says, "If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come." That is not a sentimental phrase. It is a different way of seeing a human being, one that does not pretend the past never happened, but refuses to let the past rule the present. When mercy heals the eyes of your heart, you stop seeing your wounds as a sentence handed down against you, and start seeing them as the places where grace got in. You stop seeing your unfinished roads as proof that you are worthless, and start seeing them as parts of a story still being written by someone who is good at redemption. There is one more story about sight that confronts this head-on, and it begins with a cruel assumption. There was a man who had been blind from birth, and one day, as Jesus and his followers passed by, the followers looked at the blind man and turned him into a theological puzzle. "Whose fault is this?" they asked. "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Notice how they looked at him. They reduced an entire suffering human being to a question of blame, a problem of cause and guilt, a thing to be explained. They saw his limitation and saw nothing else. But Jesus looked at the same man completely differently. He refused to lock the man's life inside the darkness he had known since birth. He said that this had not happened so that someone could be blamed, but so that the works of God might be displayed in him. Then he made a little mud of all things and put it on the man's eyes and sent him to wash, and the man came back seeing. Think about what that story is really showing you. There are things in your life and in the lives of the people around you that human eyes see only as flaws, delays, injustice, or hopeless dead ends. But in the right hands, those very places can become where the glory shows up. So, before you rush to a human conclusion about your own suffering, before you decide it must be punishment or proof of your worthlessness, learn to ask a different question. Not, "Whose fault is this?" but, "What are you doing in this?" And if you think a distorted way of seeing yourself cannot be changed, consider the most dramatic correction of sight in any of the old records. There was a man named Saul, and he was absolutely certain he saw clearly. he believed he was defending what was holy. He was zealous, intelligent, religious, and completely wrong, and he was using all of that certainty to hunt down and destroy the very people he should have been joining. He was a man whose inner eyes were veiled by pride, by misunderstanding, by zeal without light. And he was so sure of his vision that he was traveling to another city specifically to do more harm, convinced the whole way that he was right. And on that road, a light from heaven flashed around him, and he fell to the ground, and a voice called him by name and asked why he was persecuting the very one he thought he was serving. And here is the detail I want you to hold. For 3 days, Saul could not see anything at all. The man who had been so certain he saw clearly went physically blind. But in that blindness, something else began to open. And when a frightened, ordinary man named Ananias was finally sent to lay hands on him, the record says that something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he could see again, and he was never the same. The man who had been the great persecutor became the great messenger. The one most certain he saw was the one who had to be made blind before he could truly see. That story is for you, because there are scales over your eyes too. Not the scales of pride that were over Saul's, perhaps, but their own kind. The scales of old wounds, the scales of self-protection, the scales of all the things you came to believe wrongly, about God, about other people, and most of all about yourself. And those scales can fall. A person who has spent years seeing through darkness can become someone who carries light if they will let the right hands touch their eyes. So the prayer is simple, and you do not need beautiful words to pray it. You can simply say, "Cleanse my eyes, wash away the dust that has gathered over the years. Teach me to see again, not through old pain, not through the voice of fear, not through the distorted pictures the past carved into me, but through truth." And when those scales begin to fall, you will start to see differently in 3 directions at once. You will see the person who once hurt you no longer as a shadow still controlling your present, but as a soul who is also in need of light. And that does not mean you must reopen every door, only that bitterness no longer gets to blind you. You will see the people who are weak and stumbling, not only through their failures, but through what could still be restored in them. And most of all, you will see yourself, not through harshness, but through mercy grounded in truth, no longer as someone ruined by the past, but as a person being patiently healed. There is a line that says, "When we behold His glory, we are transformed into the same image, from one degree of glory to the next." Transformed by beholding, you become like what you keep looking at. So look at the right thing, and you will slowly become like it. Now there is a question that has probably been growing in you through all of this, and it is a fair one. If the light is the whole point, if the lamp inside me matters this much, then how do I keep it from going out? Because you have felt it flicker. You have known seasons where it burned so low you were sure it had died. And the answer to that question turns on a single resource, an oil that the lamp inside you runs on. And there are 2 old stories, one about 10 young women and one about a starving widow, that together tell you almost everything you need to know about keeping a light alive through a long night. There were 10 young women in the story, waiting through the night for a wedding, each of them holding a lamp, each of them expecting the same celebration. On the surface, they looked identical, same waiting, same lamps, same hope. But there was one difference, and it could not be seen until the night grew long. 5 of them had brought extra oil, and 5 had not. While the wait stretched on and the hour grew late, all of them grew drowsy, and all of them slept. Then, in the middle of the night, the call came that the celebration was beginning, and they all woke and reached for their lamps. And the lamps of the 5 who had not prepared were sputtering out, because they had run dry. They had the form of readiness, the lamp in the hand, but they had nothing left to burn. And while they rushed off to find more oil, the door closed, and they missed what they had been waiting for. That story is not really about being clever or being caught off guard. It is about the inner life. Some people carry the outward shape of faith, the lamp held up where everyone can see it, but they have not kept up the quiet, daily, hidden supply that keeps a flame alive. They have a lamp and no oil. And here is the warning in it, gently spoken. Do not become someone who is bright on the outside while slowly running empty on the inside. You cannot run a lamp meant for the deep places of the soul on the fuel of other people's approval. You cannot feed a heart that was made for the presence of God with the attention of the crowd. The oil has to be the real thing, and the real thing is gathered quietly, in private, before the night gets long. So what is the oil? In practice, it is not trying harder to look strong. It is not doing more, achieving more, performing more. The oil is communion. It is honest prayer, the kind where you stop pretending. It is repentance without hiding, the relief of bringing what is wrong into the light instead of managing it in the dark. It is gratitude over small things, which keeps the heart soft. It is letting the old words of Scripture fall on the wick of your heart like drops of oil, day after day, so that the flame has something to burn. There is a line that says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path," and that is exactly how it works. Not as a flood that overwhelms you, but as a steady light, just enough for the next step. And here is where the second story comes in, because you may be thinking, but I have so little oil left. My faith is small, my strength is gone. I am scraping the bottom of the jar. There was a widow in a town called Zarephath during a terrible famine, and when the prophet Elijah came to her and asked for food, she told him the painful truth. She had only a handful of flour left in a jar and a little oil in a jug, and she was gathering a few sticks to make one last small meal for herself and her son. And then she said, "We will eat it and die." That was the bottom of the jar. That was the end of her supply, the last little bit before nothing. And the prophet asked her, astonishingly, to make him something first out of that very last handful, and to trust that her supply would not run out. And she did. She took her tiny final portion and offered it in faith. And the record says the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, day after day, for the whole length of the famine, exactly as had been promised. The little became enough and kept being enough because it was placed into the right hands. Put those two stories together, and you have the whole truth about the lamp inside you. From the 10 women you learn that the oil has to be gathered quietly, in private, ahead of the long night, and that a flame needs more than the appearance of faith to survive. And from the widow you learn that you do not need a full storehouse before you come. You only need to open the small jar of your heart and offer the little you have, in trust, and the supply that comes from heaven does not run dry. You may think your oil is too little, your faith too small, your strength too thin, but the smallness is not the problem. Hoarding it is the problem. Place even a little into the right hands, and it keeps flowing. And if you are afraid that one more failure, one more cold season, one more stretch of unanswered prayer will finally put your light out for good, then hear the most tender promise of all. There is a line spoken about the gentleness of God that says, "A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out." Think about how easy it would be to finish off a bruised reed, already bent, already cracked. Think about how natural it would be to pinch out a wick that is barely glowing, just a thread of smoke where a flame used to be. The world does exactly that. It overlooks what is fading and notices only the flames that are large and dazzling. But this is the opposite. He bends down over the smoldering wick, shields it from the wind, breathes on it, and coaxes it back into flame. He does not break what is barely holding on. He tends it, so you do not need to relight your own lamp by force of will. There is a line that says, "Fan into flame the gift that is in you," and another that says, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit. The flame in you was not lit by your perfection in the first place, and it does not survive on your endurance. There is an old song that says, "You light my lamp, the Lord my God lightens my darkness." If the one who lit it is the one who keeps it, then a bad season does not get to declare the ending over a light that heaven kindled. The flame may shrink, it may be surrounded by the ash of exhaustion, it may burn so low that even you believe it has gone out. But what was lit by eternity is not as fragile as your feelings, and it is waiting right now to be fed again by the oil of communion. There is something almost unbearably beautiful about what happens when the lamp comes back to life. It is rarely loud. The return of light to a soul usually begins with something quiet. A lighter breath, a more honest prayer, a tear that, for the first time in a long while, does not feel hopeless. A morning when your heart finds it can hope again, just a little. And then it's the way dawn spreads, slowly and then unstoppably, until it is shining on the path in front of you again, helping you tell what to keep and what to release, what is the true voice and what is only noise. And this is the turn I have been leading you toward all along, because the light inside you was never only for you. There is a line that says, "No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. You light it and set it up high, so it can give light to everyone in the house." You do not need a great platform to shine. Every time you choose love instead of revenge, the lamp burns brighter. Every time you choose honesty when a lie would be easier, the flame grows stronger. Every time you forgive, instead of letting your heart freeze into bitterness, a ray of light passes through you and touches someone else. There are people searching for the way home right now, and they are not going to be reached by a grand performance. They are going to be reached by the sight of someone who still carries kindness, despite real wounds, who still holds peace in the middle of chaos, who still lives truthfully in a world full of masks. But here's the hard part of being a light, the part no one warns you about. A light has to keep burning in the dark, and the dark does not stay politely outside. It presses in, it looks for the smallest opening. And so the last thing I want to talk to you about is how a flame survives not in a sheltered room, but out in a world that is genuinely hostile to it. For that, there is a young man taken captive into a foreign empire that wanted to remake him entirely, and a broken down city whose ruined walls had to be rebuilt one watchful section at a time. The young man was Daniel, and he was carried off as a captive into Babylon, an empire that had a very deliberate strategy for someone like him. They did not try to break him with violence. They tried to absorb him. They gave him a new name, taught him a new language, immersed him in a new culture, and set before him the rich food and the high honors of the king's own table. The whole pressure of a vast and impressive civilization was bent on one thing, turning him into one of them, slowly, comfortably, until there was nothing left of who he had been. And the remarkable thing about Daniel is where he drew his line. It was not over something dramatic. It was over the food. He quietly resolved in his heart that he would not defile himself, and he made his stand in a matter that others would have called small and not worth the trouble. But that is exactly the point. The light in Daniel was not swallowed by the palace of Babylon, and the reason was that he guarded himself in the small things before he ever faced the large ones. He was faithful in the quiet decisions no one else would have noticed. And so when the great test finally came, when jealous men schemed against him, and he was thrown into a den of lions for refusing to stop praying, the integrity was already there, already practiced, already strong. The famous moment of the lions was only possible because of 1,000 unremarkable moments of faithfulness that came first. He kept his light through years of small choices, and so when the darkness finally roared at him directly, it could not put it out. I tell you about Daniel because the world you live in is its own kind of Babylon. It does not usually attack your faith head-on. It is far more patient than that. It offers you the rich food and the comfortable honors. It whispers that this is harmless, that everyone is doing it, that a little compromise will not cost you anything, that you can keep your light while still leaving the door open to the things that quietly weaken it. But even a small opening is enough for smoke to fill a room. An unguarded glance can plant a distorted seed. A habit that seemed harmless can slowly numb the conscience that used to keep you alert. The danger is rarely the dramatic collapse. The danger is the slow numbing, where what once grieved you begins to feel normal. What once made you stop and pray no longer stirs anything at all. So you are called to a holy resolve like Daniel's, not lived in fear, but in watchfulness. Not in hating the world, but in refusing to let the world shape your soul. There is a line that says, "You were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord, so walk as children of light." Walk as children of light. You are not only meant to avoid the dark, you are meant to live out of a whole new identity as someone who belongs to the light and carries it. And another old line says it plainly, "Those who look to him are radiant, and their faces are never covered with shame." Looking to him does not diminish you. It reminds you who you actually are. And if you are honest, you know there are places in you where the wall has already been breached, where years of letting the wrong things pass through have left the defenses weak. For that, there is one last builder I want you to meet, a man named Nehemiah. He came back to the holy city of Jerusalem and found it in ruins, the great protective walls broken down, the gates burned with fire, so that anyone, friend or enemy, could simply walk in and out at will. The city had no boundary left, no protection, nothing to keep out what should be kept out. And Nehemiah did not just stand in the rubble and weep over it, though he did weep first. He rose up, he prayed, and then he organized the people and rebuilt the wall, section by section, putting guards at the weakest points. And when enemies tried to threaten and discourage him, he refused to abandon the work he had been given, and the wall went up, and the city was protected again. Your soul needs that same kind of rebuilding, and the same kind of honesty about where it is weak. There are gates in you that have been broken by old wounds, gates left burned by harmful habits, places where you let distorted images and corrosive words pass through so many times that the wall just gave way. The call is not to feel ashamed of those broken places. The call is to rebuild them deliberately, one section at a time. To let yourself be shown which gates need to be closed, which walls need repair, which habits need to be set down, and which empty places need to be filled back up with something true. Because here is what guarding your soul actually is. There is a line that says your body is a temple, a dwelling place for the Spirit, which means the gates of your eyes and ears are not just openings onto the world. They are entrances into a holy place, and it is not narrow or fearful to guard a holy place. It is reverent. And I want to be very clear about what that guarding really is, because the world will tell you it is the opposite of freedom. The world calls freedom the ability to see everything, hear everything, try everything, and let everything in without discernment. But that is not freedom. That is just being ruled by whatever happens to reach you. True freedom is no longer being ruled by everything. True freedom is being able to say no to what burdens your soul, being able to turn away from what wakes the darkness in you, being able to choose what is pure even when no one is watching and there is no applause for it. Closing the door on what harms you is not the loss of freedom. It is the protection of it. So do not be afraid of the dark, but do not play with it either. Do not tremble as though you were a person without a father, but do not fling open the gates to what wants to steal your peace. Stand in the light, hand over your eyes, your heart, your mind, and your hidden habits, and let them be cleansed of the smoke and the dust. Let fresh oil be poured in when you are empty. Let the flame be shielded when the wind is strong. The darkness may look your way, It may call your name. It may try to remind you of every night you were weak. But there is a line that has outlasted every darkness that ever tested it. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Has not and will not, because the lamp inside you was lit by eternity and is held in the Father's hand, and as long as you stay close to the source, that light will keep burning. Before I draw all of this together, there is one more thing I have to say about the light, because there is a great deal of light in this world that is not worth following, and learning to tell the difference may be the most practical wisdom of all. You have spent a long time chasing things that promise to make you feel whole, and many of them did glow for a while. Praise glows, success glows, approval glows. The constant noise of attention glows brightest of all. And so you ran after them, believing that if enough of that light fell on you, the cold room inside would finally warm. But here is the painful thing you learned. Some lights shine on you without ever warming you. You can stand in the middle of all of it, admired, accomplished, surrounded, and still walk home at night to a room in your soul that has never once been warm. The world is full of lamps that dazzle the eyes and leave the heart colder than before. Not everything that shines is true light. Some lights only blind you without healing anything. The difference between a false light and a true one is simple, once you have felt both. A false light requires noise to be noticed, and it exhausts you because you have to keep maintaining the image that earns it. A true light can burn quietly and still show you the way, and it gives you rest because it does not depend on your performance to keep shining. A false light pulls you farther from peace the longer you walk toward it. A true light leads you home. There is a line where the light itself speaks and says, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." The light of life. Not a light that falls on you from a stage, but a light that flows from inside, from a presence in the deepest part of you, which is why no amount of applause from the outside has ever been able to fill it. And once you stop chasing the dazzling lights, something quiet and wonderful begins to happen. You start to see the true light in places you used to walk straight past. This is what the healing of your eyes was for, in the end, not only to keep you from darkness, but to teach you to recognize grace in the ordinary. A small ray of sunlight resting on your hand on a heavy morning. The sound of wind moving through leaves when your heart felt too tight to breathe. A simple word of concern from someone who had no reason to offer it. A verse you have read 100 times suddenly coming alive at the exact moment you needed it. A quiet hand helping you through a hard day without asking for anything back. A person whose eyes have been healed does not need loud miracles to know that heaven is near. They can recognize the nearness in the smallest signs because their heart is no longer hardened against the light. There is a line that says, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning." New every morning, which means each ordinary day is another chance for your eyes to be washed clean again. Another sunrise carrying a fresh supply of mercy you did not have to earn. So you do not have to wait for the dramatic deliverance, the changed circumstance, the door that finally opens, before your soul is allowed to shine again. The light you have been searching for is not nearly as far away as you imagined. There is a line that says it most plainly of all: Christ in you, the hope of glory. In you, not somewhere far off that you have to journey toward, but already present, already nearer than your own breath, already calling life back into the places you thought had gone silent. And there is one more image I cannot leave out, because it tells you exactly how this presence comes. There is a line where the one who loves you says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in." Notice that he stands at the door and knocks. He does not break it down. He does not force his way into a soul through fear. He knocks in love and waits in mercy and enters only when you open from the inside. The whole of your healing has been, in a sense, the slow story of you finding the courage to open a door you had locked out of shame and discovering that the one on the other side never came to expose your wounds and deepen your pain, but to shine into them so that grace could touch them at the root. He does not come to make you smaller. He comes to restore your true name. You are a child, loved, called, held, and lit from within by a light that the world cannot give and the darkness cannot take. Now let me draw all of this together, because we have walked a long road, and I do not want you to lose the shape of it. We began with a pain that had gone quiet, not because it healed, but because you got used to it, and with a man beside a pool who had been waiting 38 years until waiting itself became his life. And the first question, the one that has to be answered before anything else can move, was the question that stopped him cold. Do you want to be made well? Not soothed, not managed, made well, all the way down. Everything since has been an unfolding of what it means to say yes to that question, and to keep saying yes as the healing turns out to be deeper and longer and more total than you first imagined. From there we sat with Elijah under the broom tree, the man who called fire down from heaven one day and asked to die the next. And we learned that exhaustion is not a moral failure, that heaven feeds the weary before it ever asks them to rise, and that what you have been calling maturity may simply be a refusal to set the burden down. We learned that faith is not carrying everything alone, but daring to hand over what you are too tired to hold, and that the same God who answers with fire on the mountain will come and restore you with a whisper in a cave. We found Hagar in the desert, the woman who was certain she was invisible, and discovered that you can be seen in the very place you feel most forgotten, and that the name she gave him, the God who sees, is a name you are allowed to use too. And then we found Hosea going to buy Gomer back from the far country, and learned that you are not only seen, you are sought, pursued by a love that is willing to walk into the broken place and pay the price to bring you home, which is why you never had to clean yourself up first. The love is not the reward for becoming whole. It is the reason you can become whole at all. We watched Naaman almost miss his healing because it came in a humbler form than his pride could accept. And we learned that real restoration does not stop at the surface, that it goes to the root, that it sometimes asks you to step into plain water and do a small, undignified thing in trust, and that it moves at the pace of love rather than the pace of pressure, and that it wastes nothing, turning even the ashes into something with the shape of beauty. Then the road turned, and we learned to guard the heart that had just come back to life. We watched Samson lose everything not on a battlefield, but through a familiar voice he had let too close, and we learned to test the spirits, to watch the fruit, to let peace be the umpire, and to notice not what a voice says, but what it leaves growing in us. And that warning led us, almost without our noticing, to the deeper truth underneath all of it, that the soul has gates, and the most important of them is the eye. So we sat with the strangest little sentence, the one about the eye being the lamp of the body, and we saw it proven in two men. David, who stayed where he should not have been and let a single look unravel into ruin, and Joseph, who turned away from what was not his and fled the room and kept his soul, and whose hidden faithfulness became the rescue of a nation. We learned that what you gaze upon becomes what you think, and what you think becomes what you want, and what you want, in the end, directs your steps. And so the guarding of the eyes is not a grim rule, but the protection of the light. And because the way you see had itself been wounded, we asked not only for our circumstances to change, but for our sight to be healed. We stood with Elisha's terrified servant and learned that grace can be surrounding you completely while your eyes still report nothing but the enemy, and that the prayer to pray is, "Open my eyes." We walked with the blind man of Bethesda and learned that healing sometimes comes in stages, that He leads you away from the crowd first, that blurry is not the same as broken, and that the second touch is always coming. And we listened to Bartimaeus shouting from the roadside, who saw by faith long before he saw with his eyes, and who, once healed, used his new sight to follow. Then we turned the eye inward, to the most distorted vision of all, the way you see yourself. We stood with Samuel in Jesse's house and heard the sentence that overturns everything. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And we watched the overlooked boy in the field become the chosen king. We watched a blind man be turned into a theological puzzle by everyone except the one who saw him as a place where glory could be displayed. And we followed Saul down the Damascus road, the man most certain he saw clearly, who had to be made blind before the scales could fall and he could truly see, so that we would know that even the most distorted vision can be remade. And because the light is the whole point, we asked how to keep it burning. From the 10 young women we learned that oil has to be gathered quietly, in private, ahead of the long night, and that a lamp held up for show is not the same as a flame that has fuel. From the widow with the last handful of flour, we learned that you do not need a full storehouse to begin, only a willingness to offer the little you have into the right hands, where the supply does not run dry. And from the gentlest promise of all, the bruised reed and the smoldering wick, we learned that the one who lit your lamp bends down to tend it rather than snuff it out, and that what was kindled by eternity is not as fragile as your worst seasons. And finally, because a light has to burn in a world that is hostile to it, we met Daniel in Babylon, who kept his flame through 1,000 small faithful choices, so that it could not be put out when the lions finally roared, and Nehemiah in the rubble, who did not just weep over the broken walls, but rebuilt them section by section and set guards at the weakest points. And we learned that guarding the gates of the soul is not the loss of freedom, but the protection of it, that true freedom is no longer being ruled by everything that happens to reach you. That is the whole road. And here is what I want you to see now, standing at the end of it. Every one of those stories is in the end the same story. It is the story of a light that the dark could not keep. The man at the pool lifted out of 38 years of stillness. The prophet under the broom tree, fed and restored when he wanted to die. The servant woman in the desert, found and named and given a future. The wanderer brought back from the far country. The proud commander made clean as a child in a muddy river. The strong man who fell, and the young man who fled and stood. The terrified servant whose eyes were opened onto a host of fire. The blind man who saw in stages, and the beggar who saw by faith. The overlooked boy who became king. The persecutor whose scales fell away. The waiting women, and the widow, and the smoldering wick that would not be put out. The captive who kept his light, and the builder who rebuilt the walls. Every single one of them is a lamp that the night tried to take and could not. And so are you. That is the thing you came here to remember. You are not the locked room you have been living in. You are not the sum of your failures, or the length of your waiting, or the worst season you ever survived. You are a lamp that was lit by something the darkness has never once managed to overcome. It may have flickered. It may have burned so low that you mourned it, but it was lit by eternity, and it is held in the Father's hand, and it is being fed again right now, in the very moment you are listening to this. So this is the invitation I want to leave you with. Do not wait until you stop trembling to come. Do not wait until your wounds look beautiful before you let them be seen. Come exactly as you are, weary, honest, longing, perhaps still doubtful, perhaps still hurting, but willing to be loved. Let the question be asked of you one more time, the question from the edge of the pool. Do you want to be made well? And let your answer, this time, be yes, not because you have it all figured out, but because you are finally tired of stepping around the broken glass on the floor. When the next morning comes, let the light not only fall through the window, but rise inside your heart as well. Wake not merely to endure another day, but to live again. Look at the new day as a page of grace rather than a weight to survive. Look at the people who hurt you not necessarily to reopen every door, but so that bitterness no longer gets to blind you. Look at yourself not through harshness, but through mercy grounded in truth. And keep your eyes on the one who heals, because as long as your gaze stays there, the storm loses its power to pull you under, and the saving hand stays closer than the wave. And then watch what happens, because the light was never only for you. When your eyes are full of light, your words grow gentler. When your soul is at peace, the way you look at others stops being so quick to judge. You begin to see potential in people who are stumbling, and the pain hidden behind someone's hardness, and you learn to love without losing your discernment, and to be wise without growing bitter. And the people around you, who may never fully understand what was done in you, will feel the warmth of it anyway. They will sense a peace that does not come from easy circumstances, a kindness that was clearly born out of real wounds, a steadiness that the long night did not manage to break. One merciful glance from you may remind someone that they have not been abandoned. One honest word may pull a soul back from the edge. One quiet act of love may light up a corner of the world you will never even know your light reached. There is a line that holds all of this together. Let your light shine before others, so that they may see and be drawn home. Do you understand what that means? It means the light does not stop with you. It passes through you. Your healed life becomes a quiet testimony that grace is real, that restoration is real, that no one is ever too far gone, and that the Father is still, even now, lighting lamps inside souls that were certain they had gone dark. You came here to be healed, but you were healed so that you could become, for someone else, the very thing that was given to you. A light in a dark field, a sign that the way home still exists. So go gently now, and go as someone who has been seen, and sought, and bought back, and washed clean, and restored at the root, and given a new heart, and had the scales lifted from your eyes, and had your lamp tended back into flame. The night may have been long, but it was always going to lose, because the light in you does not come from the world. It comes from the one who lit it at the beginning, who guarded it through the whole long dark, and who will keep shining through you until many other weary souls, watching the steadiness of your peace, finally find their own way back to the place where new life begins. Be still then, and let yourself be loved. The Father is here, very near, and the light has never stopped calling you home.